sure that they're happy with the product, good, or service that you've sold them. I think that for every sales rep, if you've sold somebody something, you should have a 90-day follow-up to make sure that they're getting exactly what you thought that they were getting. I think you should have, again, a year follow-up. And because a lot of times what happens is we do all this front-end prospecting and work to get the person in the door. And then, that's it. And then we have that one transaction with them or two transactions, and then they go by the wayside because we're so focused on hunting. When that is your hunting ground, is the people that you've already spent all the time, energy, and resources cultivating.
Yo, what is up? This is Christian D. Evans, host of Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. And I just want to share with you real quick, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It really means a lot to us, but also our community. And, if you like this, please share this with your friend, your family, a colleague, someone that you don't even like. Definitely share that with them. And then also leave a comment and a review for us. We really do appreciate that. And show our guests some love if you find that this episode really resonates with you. Secondly, also want to share with you some really awesome news. I've had the Fortune Opportunity Network and have incredible guests, 8 and 9-figure entrepreneurs, CEOs, and founders on our podcast. And what we've done is we've actually been able to open up a Be Uncommon If You Can mastermind, where we're able to open up the door for so many of you, right? Those that are 6-figure, 7-figure entrepreneurs that are scaling, that are struggling, that really want to level up their game, their business, their life, whatever it is. I'm able to open up that door for you with this Be Uncommon If You Can mastermind. Now, we're only taking a select few of individuals. So what you'll need to do is go to christiandievans.com/mastermind-now. And the link is actually in the description as well. Guys, that is christiandievans.com/mastermind-now. We're only opening this up for a select few of individuals that really want to level up their game. You have a conversation with me, see if you qualify. And guys, enjoy the episode. And remember, be uncommon if you can. Cheers. Thank you so much for tuning into Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. I'm your host, Christian D. Evans, and we have a sales assassin on today. We're going to be talking everything about sales, because even though you may think you know what you already know, guess what? You don't. And that's the reason why we have this guy on, because we're going to be diving deep into all the sales structures, the process, the emotional aspect behind it, direct to consumer, B2C, B2B, software, how to do it, guys. And that's the reason why we have this individual on. He is a sales assassin that successfully turned around businesses with 100% growth within 12 months. He's taken sales from 8 million in revenue to 25 million in 18 months. He's a husband, father, passionate about personal development and helping people change their lives through being a better sales person and building incredible, immense, powerful businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my guest. He is also the co-founder and founder of the podcast, which is host of Grind, Sell, Elevate, my friend, Tyzer Evans. How you doing, my man?
Good. Thanks, Christian, for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, really look forward to diving into this, because obviously, like I mentioned, sales is just, it's a conversation everybody loves to talk about, right? We can all like throw a stone and we hit like another sales course. But I think why I really want to have you on is because we're diving into like some really emotional aspects, just like I said, in these different categories in these industries. But first, let me kind of ask you real quick, what are you seeing in the sales industry that a lot of salespeople are getting wrong?
Oh, man. Well, they don't necessarily do their homework first and foremost. And the biggest thing that I've seen throughout my career, I've been, in sales 17 years, really going back into college, is people just don't listen. It's just like that old adage, right? You were given 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. And a lot of salespeople are just not effective and intentional listeners. And they're so excited to get all the knowledge that they've consumed about their product, good, or service out that they don't understand that maybe they're not even talking to the right person, right? And so I think that's the first thing I've seen that where a lot of people miss on.
Definitely. So when you were talking about this a little bit, so in the B2C world, it's a very emotional sale, but also I'm noticing with the B2B world, we always think it's not emotional. It's got to be more, because you're talking C-suite, you're talking more professional, whatever. Is that a misconception, you think, in today's industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done both in my career. I spent probably the first 10, 12 years really in B2C, and I spent the last like 7 in B2B. And everything's emotional, right? I mean, it really is. And especially I've dealt a lot in insurance and healthcare, and the B2B world, and you're dealing with several different decision makers. And when you're talking about where someone might go see a provider or how they're going to receive treatment for a surgery, that's an extremely emotional thing, because you're worried about quality of care, you're worried about cost. And so, that affects an organization. And, I've helped companies as small as 2 people all the way up into the thousands. And then, of course, B2C, a lot of people. That's why I think another reason that sales people or sales can get a bad rap. Right nowadays, you see people even going away from being a sales rep because they feel like salespeople can be disingenuous because of the pressure they can apply to people, which makes them feel compelled to buy, which can also be a problem. So, but I think across the board, yeah, there's always emotion involved in buying.
Yeah, what I found very interesting, you brought up a good point, because I do see some individuals, and I just think they're just really naive when it comes to people like, hey, you don't quite understand why sales is sales. A lot of people look at it as more manipulation. The reality, no, my job is to help you move, because we know like 90% of people just don't take action, and that's my job, is to help you take action, right? And find that pain. And obviously that is emotional as well, but obviously logical in getting them to understand. Now, I do think it's an art as well as like naturally a science. And, if you could kind of dive into like, when you're helping corporations and your businesses kind of really scale the sales team and the sales process, what are certain like characteristics or traits or things like that or tips, if you will, that really help, like, the small dialed in processes that really help the move the bigger money needle further, if you will?
So, I mean, when you get into, big ticket sales, like I've done over the last couple of years, where you're dealing with multi-million-dollar deals, that's a long sales cycle. So it's a lot of nurturing. It's a lot about building trust and rapport. But, I think that at the fundamental, what I teach sales reps is really sales, all as it is, besides the effective listing, it's energy transfer. And we are energetic human beings. Everything is frequency. At least that's how I perceive the world. And so when I go into a new relationship in sales, I understand I have to relinquish the power up front to whoever I'm speaking with, right? And once all you're trying for me to do is be clear with my intentions, clear with why I'm calling, and then I start by asking questions, and what I call power questions. And I do that very strategically, not to be manipulative, but because I'm genuinely curious and I want to be able to help provide value and lower their guard. And typically the best way to get someone to lower their guard and have them feel like they're in the power seat in the beginning of a conversation or a relationship is by asking them great questions about their self, currently about their business. Now I have very strategic questions about their business to get them thinking critically about things that they are doing well or things that they might not be doing well, that I know they're not doing well. So it allows me then throughout the conversation to start to transfer the power back over to me by showing how what I'm doing may be beneficial to them after they've lowered their guard. So that's usually what I teach. Is very simple. Who you are, where you're calling from, why you're calling, ask a question. And it's a very simple formula to start a conversation. And that's where it's interesting. People can talk to one another fine, but they're scared of that initial 45 seconds of the conversation. So if you just have a tight little pitch and transfer the energy right back over to them, put them in the power seat with a great question, it makes everybody and the whole process go a lot smoother.
So let's dive into the question format a little bit, because there is power questions, and there are certain questions. It's not just like you said, just having a conversation. It is a kind of a strategic conversation a little bit. Where the path is going. So if you could kind of maybe share with our audience like certain strategies that you have found, or certain questions that are really powerful that really lead them to the right answer that you're looking for.
So this is going to be dependent on industry, right? And so I can give you examples from insurance and how I think about that. So what I've been really passionate about is, since the implementation of the ACA Act, Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, we've seen a steady rise in healthcare costs. And, the intention of that was to be able to provide, basically guaranteed issue rates. So small companies had a hard time placing insurance because maybe it's a 5-man company, but they had one person that was extremely unhealthy, it would blow up the rates for the whole company, right? And so there was a reason that they came into place. But it took away what we do in insurance, which is all insurance is risk analysis. And so you're not able to underwrite the risk. You're not able to really control claims or set pricing appropriately. And so we've had, the carriers have done really well, like certain big carriers, I won't mention names, but their stock's up 300% since the inception of that. And it was because of the built-in profit centers that the government allowed them. And so what I've been trying to help consultants or brokers do that represent businesses is look at a different way of financing healthcare. So when I call, I start talking to them. Really, I ask them strategic questions about what type of alternative risk financing strategies are you bringing to your clients? And a lot of them are like, well, we're not. Okay. Well, who are you currently, using, and what do you like about them? So we can kind of get into a dialogue about how they're helping their clients. And then I start talking to them a little bit about finances. Talk to me a little bit about what we call a PBM, or your pharmacy benefit manager, which is what dispenses our drugs, right? Huge profit center for our insurance companies. So I talk a lot about how are you controlling spend on your pharmacy benefit managers. We know that specialty medications are up 80% over the last 5 years. Talk to me about what you're doing with your groups to contain cost. And so I put them, now the power's over there, and they have to explain to me what they're doing. And I'm giving them a chance to brag about all the great things we're doing for their client. Oftentimes, though, 95% of the times, I know they're not doing anything. And so they go, well, we go with XYZ. And I go, oh, well, have you ever heard of tier 1 sourcing to Canada? Oftentimes you can get the exact same genetic compound of a drug, but it's at a 90% discount for your clients. I didn't know that existed, right? So then we start to get into an interesting dialogue. And then I talk to them a lot about what their goals are. So, hey, talk to me a little bit about your marketing goals for 2022. What are your growth projections? How are you going to get there? And again, they start talking to me about that. And what types of tools and resources are you using to hit your goals this year? And oftentimes they don't have a great answer. So those are some. Another great one I always ask, how do you separate yourself from the competition? And usually it's like, we give great customer service and, we're really tech forward. Well, hey, I don't mean to be rude, but, I work with thousands of brokers across the country, and that's the answer that everybody gives me. Really, what are you doing to separate yourself? Right. And so, it's just, and we get into a really interesting dialogue, and they see that I have a vast amount of experience, and we start talking about different solutions, and it kind of opens up a bigger can of worms.
I love those approaches. And I know it's like a different industry, but the reality is, like, if you listen to Tyzer here, you're talking about an assumptive, almost like you're assuming that they were using this ABC product, and they're like, right. Oh, you not using this, or you're not using this system? You're not, oh, wow, then that's definitely like, and then they're like, oh, shoot, they feel like they're out of the loop, which is, I think, right. is a really cool strategy as well. And then as well as just bringing up really good conversations, the pain. Okay, what is your growth? What is your marketing? What does that look like? Do you have a plan? Oh, you don't have a plan. Oh, why not? And obviously just uncovering it. But it's more like you said, it's not that, it's not that manipulation. It's just you're very interested, and it's that conversation and then that dialogue as well on the back end. Now, let's talk a little bit about obviously transitioning. So you have those questions, power questions, which is awesome. I appreciate you kind of diving into that. Now transitioning to, hey, the value side of things. Hey, is it okay if I share this information with you? It sounds like you're kind of looking for this. Is that correct? That's kind of what I'm hearing you say. Obviously, you want to do a synopsis, kind of a summary of what they said. Make sure you're tracking. If you could walk us through the next stage of that.
Yeah, and you hit on a really key point. I'm big on definitely mirroring and labeling, right? So mirroring is just matching someone's tonality. It's like I'm a California native, but I live in Texas, and so people don't move and speak and operate differently in the South than they do in California. And when I moved to Georgia, that was one of the things that was like a lot different for me. So I'll slow down my tone. I match the speed of their language. All those things, what they do is on a subconscious level, it puts a person in a position where subconsciously they go, oh, this person's like me because they speak like me, the same tonality, the same pace. And so, again, it's not to be manipulative. You're just trying to meet somebody with where they're at so they can drop their guard and listen to what you're saying. And then you hit a key point. Always you want to paraphrase or recap what they've said, because it lets them know that you are listening and you've heard what they said, and then you can move on. So, once I understand like where they're at, and then again, it's more of questions. Well, would you be interested in being able to save your clients, 60% on their pharmacy spend? Yeah, I would. Can we spend 5 minutes kind of going over some of the solutions I found very effective? And then sure. And then I lead right in with the story. And because I think it's so powerful to have them think about themselves or their clients in that situation. And then they'll immediately start to go, oh man, I have somebody like that. They could use that. So, a great example, I was talking about the pharmacy thing, right? So this is a really powerful story. I talked to them. So a lot of people don't understand that there's what we call patients assistance programs. So people that may be middle class or lower income, you can actually qualify to have the manufacturers for those big drugs you see on TV, like Humira, Enbrel, those types of things. They cost like $10,000 a month. The manufacturers will actually put you in a program and pay for those and comp those meds. A lot of people don't know this. So I tell them a story about a young woman. She was not a young woman, she was a child, and she had a genetic disorder and she was on an IV infusion. It was costing the company $1 million a year for this drug for this dependent, right? So it was blowing up the cost for this company of about 150 people. So we found them a patient's assistance program. It eliminated the $1 million claim from the books from that company. And then it cost the parents nothing on their end as far as deductible and max out of pocket. So we completely eliminated the claim to help a family. So I said, we took $1 million claim and we got it completely comped. And that will resonate with somebody like, I did not even know that was out there. I have somebody that's on XYZ. How could we solve for this problem? So now we get into a dialogue where not the power has been transferred back to me as a thought leader and expert, and we can start to get into their book of business and provide different types of alternative solutions.
I love that, and I think it's so interesting because once you understand the psychology of what a story does, you're almost talking to the subconscious. And the reason why I want to share that, because and really foot stomp on this, because see, instead of you going into the benefits and the features, which I think a lot of sales even intermediate people struggle right with. It's like, oh, this is what we get, this is what you'll get, this is what we do. And definitely in the B2B world, that's why I wanted to kind of start with that, because we think, oh, we're talking C-suite, that's what they want. And the reality is they just want the result. They really don't care how, and they just want to get the feeling of what that creates. It's the same thing with the, giving a new 2023 Corvette or something. I don't care how it works. I just want to make, does it make me feel good? Does it make it look good or whatever? Like, what's the result that I'm looking for? And like you said, this is the result. This is the system. I can help you get that. Is that what you want? And you're doing that and you're implementing it through a store. Now, with that being said, you're obviously also giving out hooks. So now it creates curiosity and intrigue. So let's talk a little bit further in regards to like, how do you morph the conversation? Because at the end of the phone call, there's always going to be, I'm going to be thinking about it. I'm going to be, we don't know if we it's time thinking about it. Overcoming those certain objections will happen. So throughout your conversation, how do you anticipate that and deal with that before you actually deal with it, if you will?
Yeah, so you're talking about getting to the end of the conversation and going, hey, this has been really great, but I'm not really sure.
Well, let me kind of clarify. So it's like, those objections are most common in the industry, right? In most industries. So it's really, how do you anticipate that and maybe have that conversation on the front end so that you're not having it on the back end, because that's where majority of the sales are lost, if you will.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So, typically, as we're having these conversations, I have like a slide deck and we have a presentation, and I immediately, in the first part of my conversation, I get their objections out of the way, because to your point, I already know they're coming. So again, like what I do, this is what we call self-insurance. So companies are paying claims as they're incurred, but we target companies who historically think that they can't use that type of risk financing because it'd be too volatile to cash flow. And so I already know that, like, hey, these are great solutions, but how it's financed, we won't be able to afford. And so I hedge that right up front and go, hey, historically, I know this is, and I have a whole slide on it, right? That shows like all of the points that they're going to bring up, lasers, high renewals, cash flow issues. I have a whole thing, and I put, it sounds risky, right? And then we go, so I just address those concerns and go, hey, I know historically small to medium-sized businesses, this isn't a way they've been able to fund their healthcare because of X, Y, and Z. And they go, yeah, absolutely. This is why I've never looked at this model. And then we go, but here's what we're doing to make sure that those companies aren't put in a position, right? So I address it, we get it out of the way, and then I go ahead and address the concerns on a following slide and make sure that's buttoned up. So then we can move on and get back to strategy. So yeah, it's in the first, I would say 15 minutes into the conversation, I've already addressed what I would think would be the top 3 rebuttals.
That's awesome. I love that approach. I think that's just so cool, because see, again, you're talking even at the first, 5-10 minutes of the phone call. Is that kind of what you're saying? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that you're addressing that. Awesome. So now let's walk us through a little bit more of the story format. Okay. Coming back to the mid side of things. So you're obviously adding value, you're creating intrigue, you're curating curiosity through hooks and through stories. Kind of walk us through into like the final final piece, which is obviously the close. I know in the B2B, like you said, the lifetime cycle is a little longer on a sales process, but it is very achievable to sell them in a very short period of time. So I'd love to get your response on that.
Yeah. So once we go through and I feel like we've had good dialogue, again, it's just, I kind of transfer the power back over to them. I've never been a hard closer. I simply ask a question like, does this concept resonate with you? And, is this something that you feel like would be beneficial for your clients? Yeah, absolutely. Great. I think would be ideal for us in next steps, right? I'm telling them what next steps is once they've said that, yes, this resonates. This makes sense for my clients. I think it'd be great. Could you identify maybe 2 to 3 clients you think this would be a good fit for? Have you thought about that in your mind? Yeah, I've already been thinking about it through our. Let's go ahead and start to look at that now. I know that we're 6 months out from when that group's even going to be thinking about healthcare, but I found the more education we can do up front, the better it is and the smoother transition is for everybody. So do you think that we can spend pinpointed time over the next 2 to 3 weeks where we can spend another hour deep diving into those companies, you and I, and we can really start to pick apart some solutions for those companies? Yeah, I think that makes total sense, right? And then we set up another time so that I have my follow-up. I'm not just leaving it with like a great conversation. We have actionable steps to move forward.
Okay, definitely. And I love that. Okay, so now you have that actionable step, right? And again, these are like common sales techniques, right? However, though, during that period of time, what is certain, like maybe email sequences or follow-up sequences that you help engage, keep communication, and keep that momentum going? So it's not like, okay, 2 weeks later, hey, wonderful, hey, how you doing? And all that stuff. You lose the momentum. So what are certain things that you put in there that just trickle in that really help, like the sales process on the back end and really that close ratio in that second appointment?
Yeah. So depending on what we've discussed, like a great example, I was just discussing one of those. We're talking about what we call leverage trend in the industry and how we're talking to tackle that. And so I just had a conversation. We did schedule the follow-up, but I went into our team and I said, hey, I need you to pull me 2 examples of showing some of our groups that are experiencing great level trend, just right on what we said, not like crazy way below that are, anomalies, just 2 groups that are experiencing what we deliver on. And so the group within about 48 hours, our back-end team got me some examples. And I made those examples look really nice. And I sent them over as test cases. Hey, just wanted to send you a little sneak peek of what we talked about and what we'll be further talking about next week. But here are 2 test cases that we can talk about in our discussion, but I wanted you to have real life examples. And so that, or send them different information based on maybe a company or a vendor that we've talked about that might be a meaningful solution for them so they can digest some more information. But you're right, it's always have to be value centric, and you continue to want to nurture the relationship because they will forget in 2 to 3 weeks what you talked about.
I love it. I love it. Now, let me ask you this, because I've noticed a lot of people have put in, a lot of business owners and CEOs and founders have been putting a lot of more emphasis on personality test. And that's culturally as well. But I'd love to kind of get your experience on like leveraging a personality test in regards to like the sales process. And let me explain, not that the customer is going to take a personality test, but that you have the data on the back end knowing, okay, hey, they're using this terminology. Okay. And I know that they're obviously more kind of more analytical maybe. And it's like, okay, you know what? Maybe I need to be more technical in the way I say things, because obviously I want to talk the same semantics and vocabulary so that it hits them a little bit, stronger. And again, you're talking a little bit about mirroring, but I'd love to kind of ask you, like in regards to like, and that's kind of like a little bit more expert level, because you really have to know the personality types pretty well. And I'm not just talking about like DISC, Enneagram, all that stuff, but like just, holistically. So have you seen that effective? If so, how have you been able to, deploy it effectively?
Yeah. So I was going to give you a saying, but I don't want to use it online because it might offend somebody. But so when I'm dealing with the business, especially what we do, oftentimes I'm dealing with the CFO, a CEO, and an HR person, and or an office manager. So you're dealing with a wide variety of people. You're dealing with someone in HR who does not care about financing. They care about their life being very simple and easy because they don't want to get, complained at by the employees that the new insurance program doesn't work. But you speaking to a controller, a CFO, they're all in and money centric. Now you're talking to a broker that's passionate about healthcare. They're looking at vendors and solutions, right? You're talking to a CEO, they're looking at the 30,000 foot view. So 100%, you're going to have to tailor the way you talk, and not necessarily a pitch, but your discussion. So when I'm talking to an HR person, I'm talking about the ease of implementation, why we have a 92% retention ratio with our company, which is historically very high for insurance companies. Usually they average around 65%. Why this is beneficial to you is you're going to have to go through a little bit more work up front. But once it's done, you're not going to have to move insurance companies every year, 2 to 3 years. So the heavy lifting's done, and then you can sit in and just focus on making your employees happy. Now we're talking to a CFO, I'm completely money centric. Here's a 10-year projection of your cumulative healthcare spend, right? Here's meaningful things and projection that we're going to be able to save you $6 million over the next 10 years of your healthcare. Same thing with the CEO. We're talking about money, and we're talking about stuff when it comes to retention of employees, because there's a cost associated with that. They're looking at such a high level view. They want everybody healthy, happy. I'm talking about the best type of claim that happens is the one that doesn't. So, and then when you're talking with the broker, then you're going to be a bit more technical and talking about different hospitals or provider systems or direct contracting, different types of stuff. So yeah, I mean, everything has to be catered and tailored, just like you work with your own employees, right? You can't manage everybody the same. Yeah, everybody is different with how they operate. So you have to be very conscientious of that when you're going through a sales process.
I love that. I think that's an incredible insight, because I'm realizing it is like a lot of psychological game a little bit, and you really have to talk directly to that individual, just like you said, mirroring in the tonality, but also mirroring like, okay, what are the words of vocabulary? Now, again, you really have to know your sales pitch and your sales process and those stories by heart, because then you really can't be focusing on the psychology of it unless you got that dialed in. Now, I would like to pivot a little bit, because we've talked a lot about the sales process and the structure. And the reason why I wanted to do that is because obviously you spend, and what I've seen in some reports, salespeople spend almost 80% of their time prospecting. And obviously when you get to the sales process, you want to make sure you're dialed in so that like your close ratio and conversions are like much better, so you don't waste all that time, right? And energy. So I'm curious, with the sales process, tell us a little bit about like some certain strategies that you can automate the prospecting a little bit and the outreach, but also making sure that it's not, impersonable, where it is very personable. It is being able to, talk to those C-suite individuals and bringing everybody together. So if you could walk me through kind of some techniques that you've seen really are beneficial, definitely in the B2C, B2B world.
Yeah, I mean, B2C it's really interesting. I've had my businesses I've owned have been e-commerce businesses. So a lot of that's just email marketing. Don't have a lot of facing. It's just trying to get them more in a funnel to the website. And we can talk about that. When I did B2B sales and insurance, a lot of that was just being really present in the community. Right. And that was something that I was heavily involved with. And so like I worked for what we call mutual exchange. It was based on a membership organization. And so oftentimes when I just did a lot of my prospecting by calling members that were more warm leads. And I would talk to them about, hey, I've seen you've been a member for 10 years. Tell me about your favorite feature. And then they would start telling me about their favorite feature, because the company was really well branded. And I said, but I see that, only members get access to our auto insurance and you don't have it. I'm surprised, just curious why. Oh, I've been happy with, State Farm for XYZ. Oh, would you ever want to just look at taking advantage of what we have to offer? So that was a great strategy there. And that was a while ago, before a lot of the crazy automation we have now. Now in the B2B world, it's great to have a back-end strategy with sales ops, sales enablement to do drip campaigns, and see how many clicks, set a certain amount of clips. If someone's like, say, interacted with a piece of content more than 3 times, you can have that automated. So it goes to a sales queue and that person knows, hey, this person's interacting with our content X amount of times. So you pull them out of the nurturing campaign, give that lead over to a salesperson to have them hit them with a phone call. Personally, what I like to do is I set up, sales sequencing, and I have my sales reps set up sales sequencing as well. And we look at a quarter. And so if it's a brand new prospect, we look, okay, over the, say, 12 weeks, we want to have 7 to 8 touches. And they all have to come from a different type of angle, because we're trying to meet the customer where they're at. So marketing is going to do back-end marketing, still do drip campaigns, right, on overall broad reach. But from a technical sales piece, we'll typically start like a phone call, email, and then maybe week 2, it's just an email with like a podcast. Hey, I found this podcast. I know we haven't spoken on the phone yet. I thought it'd be really relevant and might provide some value to you. I'd love to get your thoughts. Week 3, maybe we don't do anything. Week 4, maybe we hit them up on LinkedIn. We send a request and we start to engage a little bit with their content that they're posting on LinkedIn. And again, maybe give another week off, and then week 5 or 6, you hit them with another call, another email. Maybe this time in the email, it's talking about the benefits of tier 1 sourcing to a different country, right? So those are things that we've done. As far as like drumming up a dead market, usually what I'll do is I'll have reps focus on just omnipresent across the entire market, and we'll go out in person and meet people. I think still, it's been hard because of COVID, but the best way to build rapport, especially in B2B, is being right in front of the person. And so we'll blanket an area for several weeks and then go out and do an event for free. An event's never a pitch. It's just simply to provide a tremendous amount of value.
Wow, that's actually really cool insight. I really appreciate that. So when you're talking like 7 to 8 touches, now you said it's kind of like a leverage of both. So you have some of the sales reps doing it actively, and then as well as some of the drip campaigns, the processing automation on the back end.
Yeah.
What have you found is effective for the sales rep that you cannot really automate and you should not automate?
Yeah, the phone calls, right? I mean, it's just like, you can't beat a conversation with another human being. And it's interesting. I had a great chat with Tony Hughes, which I think he's the most read B2B sales author on LinkedIn in the world. And, he's just like, he said, 30% of sales jobs are going to be wiped out in the next 5 years because of AI. And while I agree with that, I still think that fundamentally, the reason why podcasts have exploded is because people love having conversations like this. And that's never going to go away. And the thing that is somewhat alarming for me, I have 2 sons that are 5 and 7, is that everybody carries one of these. And I'm holding the phone for everybody listening, but nobody wants to pick it up anymore and just have a simple conversation. But that's the most effective way to get your product known and for people to have trust in what you do and solidify a long-term relationship, is just talking to another human being.
That's huge, because what I've noticed, because I like to talk a little bit about the partnership side of things as well. And what I mean by that is, like, I know a lot of the B2B world, a majority of your referrals or like your partnerships, or like I should say like a lot of your sales come through warm. I already know Billy Bob. Hey, let me connect you with Jeffrey or whatever. And so definitely in the sales world, okay, you're a business owner, you're a CEO, you have a really good dialed in sales team. Okay, wonderful. They kind of implement every system and every process that you just mentioned. What are different other strategies that they could implement to help the sales team really dial in? What I mean by that is like implementing BDRs in the front end, maybe account exec back end, maybe even just leveraging more of like live webinars, live events, like you said, more of just in-person events. Things really be up.
Christian, you there?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, lost you for a second, the last part of the conversation. But you're talking about how to implement strategies with like SDRs, BDRs, and then on the back end with account management teams.
Well, that as well, but also on the front end, just different other strategies that they could work to, like you were saying, live events, whether that's more of like online events, that's really big right now, webinars, to really push more activity to the BD, to the sales team in the B2B world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the SDR type position, those are important because it allows someone to be, like, for me, I feel like a pretty high level. And if I get somebody on the phone, we're going to have a great conversation, right? But it's probably not super efficient use of my time to make 80 phone calls anymore, right? So I think that whole SDR type position, whether you have 1 or 2 in the company, I do think they're important because it allows some to cut their teeth in the industry. It allows them to get a lot of reps and a lot of practice in, and to be able to set appointments for account executive or an RVP, an AVP, whatever you want to call them nowadays. Everybody's got a new title. All right. And then to set that appointment to let me do my job. So I think that is a really effective strategy. It's something that I've experienced and we've used. On the back end, I think it's just as important to make sure that we're continuing to nurture our clients, that we're touching base. I think it's really important to have surveys to understand, to make sure that they're happy with the product, good, or service that you've sold them. I think that for every sales rep, if you've sold somebody something, you should have a 90-day follow-up to make sure that they're getting exactly what you thought that they were getting. I think you should have, again, a year follow-up. And because a lot of times what happens is we do all this front-end prospecting and work to get the person in the door. And then, that's it. And then we have that one transaction with them or two transactions, and then they go by the wayside because we're so focused on hunting, when that is your hunting ground, is the people that you've already spent all the time, energy, and resources cultivating a relationship with. So I'm really focused on making sure that I'm always constantly top of mind with the people I've solidified relationships with, and then continuing to build on top of that.
So should that be, and that's a really good point, because see, I see that all the time as well. So, and I know that a lot of times the sales team sends it over to the customer success team, and then they take it from there, the onboarding, and stuff like that. But do you think that the sales team should be more integrated with like a 90-day checkup, 30-day checkup, or whatever, and following up, even getting maybe some referrals, definitely if you've been able to produce some cool results for them? What does that look like?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So that's why I do it. For me, I did something that made sense to me to do it organically. Actually, it's, I got this from my aunt. My aunt was she was a killer. She was a baller. And she, no college education, nothing, just went out there, started a travel agency after doing sales, hardcore sales. And she taught me, she said, when you get out there, she said, I connect with 30 people a day. And then I connect with everybody I connected with last week. So she had a whole strategy. She said, I always do a 90-day, a 6-month, and a year follow-up. And I always contact somebody on their birthday. And so she said, I'm always constantly touching people I've had. And then I have goals that I have to prospect for every day. So she did this for 6 years, and that was her thing. And that's what she taught me to do when I got into insurance. And she became an entrepreneur and had an 8-figure business and did really well. And so that's what I've taught my sales rep. You always want to nurture people, because to your point, even if it is just like, I can only sell somebody auto insurance once, right? But I can still make sure that they're utilizing it when they need to, that they understand their benefits and features. And to your point, 90% of people are willing to give a salesperson a referral, and only 10% of salespeople ask for one.
And that's how you exponentially grow. I mean, it's just as simple as that. Definitely when you have a list of 40, 50 clients that you have access to, and all of a sudden you just leverage them, and each one of them gives you 4 and 5. It's just all of a sudden that's where you just start really becoming massive. Man, this is really awesome. Now let me ask you, are there any other technical strategies that you have found out that a lot of people are leveraging? I think you were kind of hinting on a little bit, the SDR, BDR kind of thing, structure, that cold calling concept. Do you feel like it's still alive? Because then let me explain this real quick. I do think any strategy will work. Right. But there's one good strategy and there's one really great strategy. Right. And I think, what you're saying a little bit is be more a little custom in your approach, instead of just, gunshot approach, be more a little bit more systematic and targeted. In regards to, like, obviously being more, when you're dialing in that prospect, hey, I'm talking directly to that person. I've consumed a lot of that content, and I know exactly where they're at in the position. Hey, Billy Bob, I know that you're struggling with this, and this. I think we could, offer our position, whatever. Would you want to get on a scheduled phone call, whatever, like whatever that looks like, but be more custom approach with the sales strategy that's going on. Instead of this gunshot approach, do you find more of a target approach is better, or is it kind of a mixed bag a little bit?
I think it's a mixed bag, because when you're when you have SDRs, you're utilizing that position, you want them to be omnipresent and shotgun approach. You want them hitting, you want to be as top funnel as heavy as possible. I want as many people coming through that funnel, and then we're filtering it out, right? So that's my job. I feel like you set the appointments, I'm going to qualify the person. It's like almost a 2-step qualification. They identified the person as in the industry, and they probably do what we are hoping that they do, right? They're in our niche, kind of in our niche, or they could potentially be. They have at least the clientele that we're looking for. And then you set it up with me. And then what I'm trying to identify, does the concept resonate? Do I think that they're willing to roll their sleeves up and do a little bit more work to help their clients? And if I feel like they're resonating with the concept that we're able to provide, then we go down the sales process and do more of the nurturing, and we talked about kind of that whole process. But if I identify right away in a conversation that they have no real vested interest in doing right by their current clients, or they don't understand the concept, or they're not willing to learn about the concept, I cut them loose. right? But I still want the SDR team to bring in as many of those opportunities as humanly possible and let me qualify it.
And I know in life, in personal development as well, sales, there's always things that you can always improve on. So now that, I mean, obviously you're an expert, you're an assassin at this. What are certain things that you're doing to always improve your game? Like, they're just, I'd love to kind of dive into a little bit more technical stuff. What are you seeing that you do every single day, or just kind of optimizing just little tweaks here and there that help you get the best result in your sales game?
Yeah, no, I love that question. Well, one, I think it just starts with discipline. Like, I think just in life in general, there's no real self accountability anymore. There's no real self responsibility. So everything starts with me. I've been up since 4:30. I've already meditated. I've already done breath work. I've already hung out with my kids. I've already been to the gym for an hour and a half. So that's how I start my day. I read every day. And so part of my morning routine is I read 10 pages in a sales book or a leadership book. Right now I'm currently reading the Lean Startup. I've got right here. I've got another book over here, Scaling Up. So I'm constantly reading them and constantly feeding myself, and it comes through repetition. So when I'm training people, when I make them role play, I role play. And one of the things I've always done as a sales leader and as a rep, I'm constantly wanting feedback from my peers and my boss. So if I'm working on a new template or a new sequence, hey, review this, let me know what you think. And when I was a sales leader, I make my team, people thought, it was a bit sadistic and they didn't get it. My sales team met every single day at 8 a.m. Every single day we had a sales meeting, and people are like, man, like I'm used to meeting once a week or bi-week or even once a month. I'm like, it's not efficient enough. You have to understand you're providing a common mission every single day for your team, and you take time to get everybody pinpointed on what we're going to attack today and how they're going to facilitate and be a part of that. So then everybody's on a common mission. Everybody knows what the objective is today. Everybody knows what the core goal is today. Everybody knows what it is for the week and for the month. And then through that process, once everybody's on the same page, then I go into role playing. I've watched my team do, Grant Cardone videos, Jed Blunt videos, where we're learning different types of technical sales stuff. I'll play motivational videos for them to get them hyped up. So I think it's really important for me. And that's why I feel like I've had a lot of success with sales teams with having that 100% growth, or taking something from 8 million to 25 million in a market that was historically dead for a decade, is because I drill in and I invest in my people as much as I invest in myself.
Well, you bring up a really good point, and I kind of want to emphasize, because everything's gone online and a lot of sales teams are remote now, you always have to have that synergy, right? And synergy is what really, gets the sales team's glue and just massive energy. Because when you go into a sales call, it is a psychological game a lot of times. If you don't feel confident or whatever, if you don't have that self-image or whatever, that individual in the back end can feel that, right? It's a psychological. So what I'm curious on is, what are you seeing right now to keep the synergy, definitely having remote workplaces? Because it is very interesting. Hey, Billy Bob got in in like the Slack channel. Hey, I got a sale, woohoo, fire, all that stuff. But it's just not the same as everybody high-fiving, getting pumped up, listening to some cool, crazy music. That like I said, that synergy. And then you go to that, like, oh man, Brad just closed an awesome deal. Man, I can do this, right? It's just this constant back and forth, and that grow the business really, really effectively. But now everything's kind of gone online. How do you keep that synergy, and how do you keep that excitement?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things you can do. First, man, you got to have competition. So I love pinning people against each other and letting them go at it for a month, and then posting the results daily. Whether it's just purely call volume, whether it's closed deals, maybe it's opportunities through the door, and that creates a lot of great competition, so people can talk smack on the morning meetings. But I think it's really important that you, like, to your point, as opposed to like you're on Slack and everyone's like, a deal done, and everyone's like, oh, emoji. Like, oh, okay, that was cool. Like, how many emojis did I get for my deal close? What I like to do is, when someone closes a deal, you put them on blast. Hey man, talk to us about how you won this. We want to hear from you. You're the expert. You crushed it. And then you put them in a position of power where they feel so good about talking about their victory, talking about their win. But then it's also a really great strategy, because then other reps who may not have been using that approach, that tactic, get to learn from someone that just went out and had a great kill. And so that's really powerful. And then the role playing that I mentioned, doing that in the morning, I would tell you, every single sales rep that worked for me will tell you that I loved role playing with Ty, because I knew that it was the worst call I was going to have all. I will beat you up to no end. There's no way that you're getting me to buy anything from you. And so every call after that will be a piece of cake than, dealing with me.
I love that approach, honestly. You just beat them in the face, beat them until they're just sore, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh man, this was an easy phone call." Whatever. I love that. I love
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
So Tyzer, how can our community reach out to you, our audience, whether it be just sales training, whether it's just being around your community and your content? How can they reach out to you, bud?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. You can find me all social media platforms. Tyzer Evans. I'm probably most active on LinkedIn. On Instagram and a little bit on LinkedIn. And then you check out the podcast. It's Grind Sell Elevate, and I get a lot of great salespeople, leadership people. Very much conversations like this with some experts that teach me stuff.
Awesome. Awesome. Guys, those links will be in the description below. So make sure you consume that content. And again, the biggest thing is just taking action. And we know that, we get that. That's obviously why we built a community. And many of you guys that are listening are action takers. So make sure you just stop what you're doing. You think really top dollar sales techniques and stuff, but obviously reach out to Tyzer and obviously consume his content. And before we let you go, again, I just appreciate the immense value that you brought, just talking about the sales structure, the sales process, power questions, the back end of the, overcoming objections on the front end, which is a lot of people, mistake. And then as well as just kind of the sales and acquisition channels that we should be aware of and the processes. But before we let you go, is there any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience?
Man, I don't know, Christian. I think that for me, my message to everybody, and it's just historically how I've lived my life, is that kind of going to more of the personal development thing to do with sales. We all have these self-imposing limiting beliefs, and it's all an illusion. I always tell people that, like, whatever you're most fearful of, that fear is actually your North Star. It's that North Star, that's the thing that you should be doing. And that's your conscience telling you to move in that direction. But it's your ego telling you, no, well, what if? And like Jim Rohn says, right, it's all risky. It's risky if you do it. It's risky if you don't. So just go ahead and walk through the fear, and the blessings on the other side, like picking up that phone. I know it's scary. I know it sucks. But once you do it and you start making a couple $100,000 a year, you'll be sure as shit happy you did.
That's awesome. And that is the sales assassin, my friend, Tyzer Evans. Guys, that is Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. Until next time, remember, be uncommon if you can.
Yo, this is Christian D. Evans, Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. We thank you so much for listening to this amazing episode. If you feel and you know that this was valuable to you, please show some love to our amazing guest by liking this, by commenting on this, by making sure that you do a nice 5-star review, and just show some love to our guest. That'd be really awesome. Also, make sure you share this with a friend, a family, a colleague, someone that you believe would bring value to their life right now. And guys, we just want to say thank you again for just being part of our community. If you want to have more resources, don't be afraid. Go to christiandevans.com. You can actually schedule a phone call with me, or you can send me an email at christian.evans@beUncommonIfYouCan.com. That's christian.evans@beUncommonIfYouCan.com. Always love to hear some feedback, and let me know what is the number 1 or 2 things that you are struggling in your business and your life, and we'll make sure we have those conversations. Guys, that is Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast, and until next time, remember, be uncommon if you can. Cheers.